Now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If any member of the board or any citizens request discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent portion of the agenda. Item A, the approval of minutes of Board of Education of the regular meeting of July 23, 2012, and the study session of August 13, 2012. Item B, the approval of personnel actions submitted by Rebecca Peck, Director of Human Resources, resignation, social studies teacher at Romulus Middle School, and bus driver, employment, Romulus Middle School band teacher, physical education health teacher at Romulus High School, and special education teacher at Romulus High School. Recall elementary physical education teacher, third grade teacher, special education classroom aide, and a high school and special education student aide at Barth. Item C, the approval of the bills payment is submitted by Sherry Papazoglu, Director of Business and Operation, in the amount of $1,570,366.82.
Mr. Chair, I motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Buckley, supported by Mr. McLaughlin. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Next item of business is report of the superintendent. I'll turn it over to Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, tonight we have, to begin with, a brief presentation by Sue Mitchell. We have Molly Parent here also, high school special ed teacher extraordinaire, and intern this year. Anyway, to tell us about a new program for a group of our special education students who where we're kind of changing plans for those kids because they used to be part of a center program and that's no longer possible. So I'm going to let Sue Mitchell give you a little bit of background, and Sue and Molly will inform you about this program. And this is going to be a point of pride of Romulus Community Schools. I just know it.
Okay, we're going to be starting a young adults program at the high school for students with disabilities, and it's typically going to be for the age range 20 to 26. And historically, those students with mild cognitive impairments have been able to go to the Western Wayne Skills Center. Well, Act 18 has changed their funding criteria, so as of this fall, those students have been sent back to us. So we're very excited to be starting a program for them. These are for the older students who really need a little bit more support in independent living. So Molly's going to share some of the specifics of the program with you. The reason we're going to do it in Romulus is that's where these students are going to live. They're part of our community. So it just makes sense to us that they learn to use our banks, that they learn to use our community services, that they go to our grocery stores and learn their budgeting skills for the money that they'll be spending in our own community. So we had some other options, but this seems to make the most sense to us. They will be housed in the high school, however, they won't be part of the high school community. So we won't be having the 20 to 26-year-olds participating in extracurricular activities. This program is just starting out, so we'll be developing some activities for those students. We're going to be working to not only provide them with job skills, but to help them to develop some job sites within the community. I have to give a big thanks to our maintenance department because we were kind of worried about the startup costs for this kind of program. We need things like refrigerators, washer and dryers, stoves. We need them set up in a classroom at the high school. And the maintenance department has found all those big ticket items. So it's been relatively inexpensive to get this program off the ground, and we're really excited about it. So I'll let Molly take over and give you some more details.
I think I've met most of you, but for those of you I've not met, I'm Molly Parent. So I started at the high school 2 years ago. Previously, I spent 8 years at the elementary level in special education. And when I started at the high school, the categorical numbers were starting to rise. So that was one of the other problems we were looking at, not only students being sent back from centers, but also a large number of students in one room, as well as age spread. So the program is going to be called the LIFT program. I know Romulus High School right now is the Eagles and they soar. So we just kind of tried to connect it a little bit, and it's going to be learning independence for transitioning. So again, as Sue mentioned, the Act 18 funding was no longer included students with mild cognitive impairments. The enrollment in the categorical room was out of compliance. We had 23 students. And in addition, the age range was male and female students ages 14 to 21, which when you're in that age range, we don't want to have adults and minors in social settings. So developing a separate program was going to meet several needs. The program is going to offer transition skills for these students. They're going to learn independent living skills, such as taking care of a home, a budget, planning meals for themselves, also job seeking skills, career skills, and then again, basic academics that they need for daily living, survival, and being able to hold a job. It's going to provide an appropriate age range for the students, so we will have predominantly the 20 to 26-year-olds, but we will also have some of our students have been with, what is it when you're held back? I'm sorry, I was going to say withheld, but that's not correct. Held back, and so they are juniors and seniors in high school at age 19, 20, so we are going to have juniors, older juniors and seniors in this program as well, and then it's going to also have 2 classrooms to address the class size. So the program goals, I looked and researched heavily other programs that were already established, because if they've already been successful, there's no need for me to reinvent the wheel. So I have developed these goals from successful programs like the Western Wayne Skill Center, Kent ISD. They had these goals already established. So they will have academic skills needed for successful employment. Students will have the socialization skills needed for successful employment. They will develop skills needed to seek and gain employment, and they will have basic skills for independently managing personal living. And again, our objectives, I'm not going to read all of these to you. They are outlined in the brochure you have, but these are just specific targets that help meet those 4 key goals for the students. We are focusing heavily on communication skills, writing and speaking skills. When you are in a job, you'd be able to communicate, and the basic money and problem solving as far as math goes. Again, startup cost was a huge priority when we were trying to develop this. So we looked at what jobs are available at the high school or in district. And so we have come up with some clerical support for staff, such as the mailroom, such as copying for some of the staff members who'd be interested in helping us. Key Train is career and technology skills. Daily living skills, we will be doing the laundry for the Eagle's Nest and for the CRNA program. We will be planning meals and budgeting for those, and eventually preparing food that we hope to sell in the cafeteria to staff, maybe at the elementary level. We're going to focus on home safety, and then we started the recycling program last year. That was a very big success with the students, and outdoor maintenance. In the future, our goal is to model after the Western Maine Skills Center and Kent ISD, is to go out and speak to businesses in Romulus and see who would be willing to house some of our students as on-site, community-based training. In order to do that, we're going to have to get collaboration with the local businesses. We're going to need to develop transportation skills using local transportation methods, such as we've thought about maybe the smart bus. A lot of the students are not going to be able to pass a driver's license as soon as they hit 18, so they'll be able to be employed but may not have transportation. And then various community involvement activities to kind of make sure they have a well-rounded picture. Any questions? Yes.
I don't know if I missed it or not, and if I did, I apologize for being redundant. What are the budgetary impacts of this? Is this we're gonna receive FTEs for these students?
We will.
Okay.
These students up through age these students up through age 26 will be eligible for a full FTE.
I thought so. It's just, in the past, we really haven't had a program here to capture those later years. That was all left to center programs.
Correct, correct.
And in addition, what we were looking at as well is that when Western Wayne Skill Center no longer took students with mild cognitive abilities, it impacted all of Wayne County. So some of the smaller surrounding districts are also having to try and figure out what are we going to do with the students, and they've taken the wait and see approach. So one of our goals is that if we are successful enough, that we then can pull in some of the Belleville, Woodhaven, and then we capture.
We become the center program.
Yes, and so then we kind of capture the money that way. I mean, that's where we are looking at when we decided to start this, because they were surrounding and suffering as well.
I'm sorry, the other question I had, the in-house jobs that you have, are those similar to co-op? Are these students gonna be earning funds for it, or is that just gonna be a skills learning?
It's going to be a
experience?
learning skills activity.
Okay, and do we have clearance from our bargaining units? Or is that something in the process?
Actually, I did investigate that. I had sent Sue and Rebecca just a draft a very long time ago about some ideas of having these students go to the elementary, and they had stated if the job could possibly take a job of a bargaining unit member, they cannot do it. So I was very thoughtful in the stuff we have created. It's nothing that is on anybody's list of job criteria anywhere. So I was very thoughtful in that. If it were to appear, we'd be willing to negotiate it or take it off or come up with something different. The other thing you had asked is the credits, that they're not going to be earning credits, but when I've investigated how these programs have to work for us to be able to put them in a job site, I have to show proper documentation that the skills I've taught in-house match skills in the community, because otherwise it's cheap and free labor. So I can't send them out without ever showing that I've already trained them on that. So I've already kind of been investigating fair labor practices and the kind of stuff we're going to have to establish with the businesses to make sure if we are audited, we're doing it correctly.
Absolutely. The only thing I would suggest, and I know you'll probably do this throughout, but as you start to roll this out and build up your collaboration with the community, is perhaps, Carl, schedule a presentation with the Chamber of Commerce. Because they
You
will-
read our mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm supportive of this. Please don't take my questions as being not
No.
supportive. I know anything we can do to provide some clerical assistance in our buildings, I'm happy to do that, so. Thank you.
I have one question. Sue or Molly, how many students do we anticipate having in the program?
Well, right now, we're opening with 11,
Okay.
but last September, I opened with 11, and by February, I was at 22. So I anticipate we're going to have move-ins to the 9th and 10th grade program, as well as the secondary program. The other piece is that previously when students came to not halfway houses, the
Group homes.
Gosh, I'm sorry, my vocabulary is slipping my mind. When they moved to the group homes, we immediately sent them to the Western Wayne Skills Center. So there was quite a few of those students that we just never even saw in Romulus because they came in at 21. So I anticipate, unfortunately, some of the people that live in group homes move from home to home, that I do think we'll probably end up with some of those students as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will they be included in the general population for transportation?
No,
Okay,
no, because again, they're adults
okay.
and they've already finished high school, so to stick them back on a high school bus, it's not not safe or socially appropriate.
So will we be providing the transportation for them
Special ed.
separately? Okay.
And
Yes.
it'll be the special ed route that's already run to the high school. We already have a special ed bus that does a route to the high school, so we will just use that route, I believe.
Yeah, this is new for all of us, so we're kind of making this up as we go along, but we're certainly doing our research and making sure that we're doing appropriate in the best interest of students. But it could be a potential opportunity to bring more students into the district. We just don't know right now. We're starting with a handful of students, but we just don't know how it might grow.
I have one other question. Will their school time be the same as the high school hours, or are they
Looks a
gonna be
little different.
As of right now, it will be the high school hours. When we secure job placement sites, it might be different because employment normally doesn't start at 7:15 in the morning, so it might vary.
And as if this program does grow, it is a young adults program, so it really is separate than high school students. If it were to grow, we may have to consider looking at an off-site location as well. So just a lot of unknowns, but I'm really excited about this opportunity. Livonia did open up the Skill Center for a fee for service, and they wanted $14,000 a year. Per student.
Wow.
So it just makes sense to us. These students are going to live in our community. It makes more sense for us to start a program in our own community.
I just got a couple of questions, actually. One comment, too, is Mr. McLaughlin mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. It might be a good idea to maybe go to the Romulus Rotary, too, because there are a lot of business owners and people that are influential in the community, and I'll get you a contact name for that if you'd like after the meeting. What part of the high school will these students be housed in, these individuals? What area?
Bill Garland and the other maintenance staff very generously gave up a very large space that already had the proper electrical outlets. It looks like it was an old audio-visual room, but he's used it as his work room and his
Okay.
kind of office area.
So it's over there by the art room,
by the
the
art room,
small engines room in that
right across
area?
from that assistant principal's office. It's
Okay,
right.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has a separate entrance and exit, which is pretty convenient.
So is it one room or two rooms?
It's actually one large space, then there's a small kind of like office area where we'll be able to have the computers, and then there's a whole nother storage area and potential bathroom area. So,
Because you mentioned about the age group of the students, that's why I was wondering.
oh, there
How are
will
you
be
gonna
two
s-
classrooms. The teacher you approved tonight at the high school, she will be in room 410 where I previously was
Right.
with the 9th and 10th. And then I will be over by
And then
the-
that common area is where the students are actually gonna learn the skills of, the lifelong skills that they need to, okay, great.
Yeah,
Yes, go
it's not really a question, just a statement. I'm really excited, and I'm so glad you guys came up with this. I know Molly and I'm really proud of it too, because you guys have done such a great job. Molly and I went to the transition conference when all these problems were coming up in the county with them stopping the Wayne Skills Center. Personally, it's affected me too, because my son's on the other end, where he's more severely affected, and he doesn't really qualify for the skills center, but yeah, he still doesn't have a place to go either, so we're still working on that. But when that was happening, I went to Sue and I said, what are we gonna do? Because we've got kids here that I know aren't gonna make it to the skills center. Skills center's not gonna take them. She goes, yeah, we know, they're coming back. And I said, what are we gonna do? And she said, we're already working on it. So Molly and I were at a conference together, and we saw a lot of good tips and some good ideas, and we both came back really excited, and I'm so glad you guys put it all together. And
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I think the kids will really benefit from that.
And I appreciate you saying that, because we were determined not to look at it as a problem, because these are our kids.
Right.
They live in our community, and they deserve the best that we can give them, and that's what we plan to do. So thanks for your support as well.
I'm just glad that it's community involvement, that our kids are being brought back to their own home communities and being allowed to work and learn how to live in the community that they actually live in.
Any other questions?
Any other ones?
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Great idea, great program, and a great opportunity to teach our kids to be contributing members of our community. Okay, next we have a couple of action items on our list. Item B, it's necessary for the board to select a candidate for the Michigan Association of School Boards Board of Directors. You have in your packet, board members, 4 choices there. One of them is an incumbent. The other 3 are running against the incumbent for 1 seat, and we are only allowed to select 1.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McLaughlin.
I move that the Board of Education designate Keith Warnick as our candidate for the MASB Board of Directors Region 8.
Do I have a support, a second?
Support.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations?
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
well, that's okay, I'll go with this one. I'm good.
Good.
My understanding is Keith Warnick is the incumbent.
Yeah, Keith, and that's what I was gonna offer, is Keith is the incumbent, and the others, especially Earl Rickman, are very qualified persons, but on a personal level, I've contacted Keith for resources that MASB offers numerous times for his mentorship and things, and I think he's done an excellent job. I personally know, I went to school with Roderick Means, so, you know, it's not like I was playing favorites or anything, and I'm not saying anybody thought I was, but
No.
Keith is the incumbent, and, you know, I think he has served us and the whole region well.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess kind of to chime in off of what Mr. McLaughlin spoke of, I think all of the candidates here are qualified, and it may be a really hard decision, but, I mean, I'm definitely comfortable in going with Mr. Warnick.
Okay.
Again, I think everybody, especially, Mr. Rickman, have done some exceptional things throughout the educational community, so it was a really hard decision, but I'm comfortable in supporting Mr. Warnick.
I agree with you 100%. It was a toss-up between both of them on mine,
That's
too.
what I was thinking.
That's what was gonna be my feeling.
Because
I'm like, this-
I've talked to
I'm
both of
fine.
them in several events, and Mr. Rickman and Mr. Warnick are
He's got
both,
some impeccable
yeah, they're both,
Yeah.
you know, it was either flip of a coin or somebody's got to make the
Yeah.
motions. They're tied. So is there any other nominations? Okay, so it sounds like the board wants to go with Mr. Warnick, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, 7-0, Mr.
Get a
Warnick.
second to the motion.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry,
Sandy
I'm
did.
sorry.
Sandy
I
did.
never written down.
Oh, sorry
And as
about
I
that.
understand it now, Anna goes to the MASB site and votes electronically on behalf of the board. Okay, moving on, I'm sorry?
Do we have to go back and do these? Because they're in the consent agenda.
No, they're in the consent agenda, they're all set, those are really more for your
Yeah.
information.
Most, some of them were FYIs and some of them
Yeah,
weren't, that's why.
yeah, well, the higher, and that's what you approved.
Okay,
So
just
you're
want to
good.
make sure.
Okay, item C, regulation update. This is something for policy 5340. This is a practice that we have made our standard practice for probably almost 6 years now. Recall back, you know, in 2006, I remember when I came to the district, I think we had about 8 split classrooms at the elementary, and one of the things I shared with the board, and the board was supportive of, was working on ways to eliminate those split classrooms at the elementary, and we've done several things, but one of the more effective processes that we've used is a way of staffing classrooms by looking at the actual need. Sometimes what happens in an elementary building is you have an odd number of students, meaning it's not enough for 2 sections of 3rd grade classrooms, but it's too much for 1 section. What do you do? How do you manage that? So the purpose of this regulation is to kind of operationalize a practice that we've already been doing. And Rebecca, this was your work. Any other comments you'd like to make about this?
Nope, I think you pretty much covered it.
This is really an FYI for the board, and it's designed to go along with policy 5430 staffing, so that we have a means of explaining to staff members and parents why we do what we do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I just had a correction. I think on the agenda it says 5340 and it says 5430, so I just
Oh.
want to
Yes.
make sure. I just want to make sure that we got the right thing and we're approving
It should be
the right-
50, it should be 5430,
agenda's wrong.
R2.
So the number on
The
the
agenda
on the
is
item
wrong.
Yeah, I
is
just want to make
correct.
sure everything
Well-
matches.
The
Okay,
agenda
so
is
it's
wrong.
5430.
Okay.
She just got the number flipped.
I do
I
it
did
all the
that on the
time.
lottery ticket and I lost big.
All right.
And that's why I caught it, because I always do it.
I understand this is an FYI item. I have a serious problem with the second paragraph. And my biggest problem is, we don't do it uniformly. It says here that when necessary, newly enrolled students are directed to elementary buildings within the district for additional enrollments. That's not necessarily the case with a particular elementary school and kindergarten, as was evidenced last year when I raised the concern. I have a problem putting in our regulations that if somebody moves into an area because their realtor tells them there's a school building there, and we say, well, yeah, but if you wanna go to our schools, we're gonna bus you for 35 minutes to the other side of town. eh, that's it. I'm just on record as being opposed to it. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Not a comment, just a question. How do you determine who goes where? Is that something that the administrators sit and discuss, or how is that,
Well,
determined?
I want to begin by emphasizing that in most instances, we keep the children at their home school. But sometimes what happens, and you all are aware of this, we don't find out that we have these children until the first week, in some cases the second week of school. And sometimes those classrooms are already filled up and there's just no room in that school, there's nowhere to go. And so at that point, when a parent comes in and registers those children, we first look at the home school, we look at the situation. Sometimes it's necessary to add a teacher, and we have added teachers after school starts. We try not to add a teacher in these tight economic times unless we really need a teacher. So our procedure is we look at the district-wide student-to-teacher ratio for that particular grade level. And if we can accommodate them in another building, our deal that we make with the community is we provide the transportation just as if they were going to their home school. And we've had many successful instances of moving kids around the district. We try to do it in a way that we can kind of maximize the established bus route, so we don't have to send a bus across town for one or two children. And it's one of those things that's messy, but we work through as best we can. And we always offer parents the option, if you really want them to go back to the home school, check back with us every couple of months. And because students come, students go. When there's space, we're happy to move them back to the home school. But sometimes it's the best we can do. At this point, I don't believe that we have any crosstown transfers of students other than those that want to do that by choice. But that could change the first week of school.
I have one other question, when you said choice. We have, school of choice where there's, 10 spots per grade,
Out of district
out
school
of
of choice.
district. Do our residents get priority first, and then those, school of choice kids out of district are placed in the building? How does that go? Because I guess what I'm
Right.
getting at is, we're not bumping our residents for.
Right. No, we're not. In fact, the only time where that could be a case, again, is the example I gave you before, where someone doesn't show up until after school has started and the room is already filled. We're not going to pull out a school of choice student and move them somewhere else, although in some cases we have done that. But what we will do is our practice is to send school of choice students to places where we know we need extra students to round out the class sizes. So it's very, very seldom do we run into conflict with that. Any other questions? All right. Next is MASB policy 1030. This is about membership, and recall, board members, that this was a policy that was necessitated by the change in school board election law, moving school board elections to November. So this would constitute the second reading of this policy and board approval of the policy, so it'll be formalized into our board policy.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move the Board of Education approves the second reading and adoption of the proposed revisions of policy as follows. Membership policy 1030 of the Board of Education as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Ms. Buckley. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. 7-0. Motion passed.
Next, item E. This is the first reading for policy 3510. And 3510 is a policy that's linked to our school bonding. And I'm going to let Sherry give you a brief introduction of this.
So the policy was created to ensure with the IRS that municipalities and school districts that sell tax-exempt bonds, that those bonds are qualified to be tax-exempt. So basically, they're just trying to make sure, the IRS is just trying to make sure that if you capture or if you purchase a bond that is considered tax-exempt, is it really tax-exempt? So they're turning the onus back on the district or municipality or anyone else sells a tax exempt bond to make sure that those bonds are still tax exempt. The only time that a bond, the only time that we would worry about something like this would be during a refunding, the sale of new bonds, or if something called arbitrage is created. And I'm not going to get into arbitrage right now. Maybe I can send you some information on it later, but it is embedded if you'd like to read it in black and white here. But basically, that's a nutshell. I received this information from our attorney, one of our attorneys, True Law, to make sure that we adapted the policy. There are also procedures on top of this policy that the district business office will be following to make sure that if any changes in our bond status happen, that we're on top of that to make sure that we are still in compliance with being tax exempt.
I'll just add, based on a conversation I had with one of you previously about this, you'll note that the superintendent is mentioned several times, but I just want to remind you that in the introduction to our board policy, superintendent really means superintendent or designee. I don't want you to
I
think
wrote
that
that
I'm an expert in this area. This is really Sherry's area,
figured you
and
were
we
like,
consult a lot, but she knows way more than I do.
Okay.
Good point. Not about me knowing more about bonds. About you creating a designee.
Do you need a motion to acknowledge the first reading? or
No.
just information?
No.
Any questions anybody have?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
More or less, can we possibly get what those procedures are going to be?
I can show
for
those.
the, I guess it would be number 7 on the compliance.
I can definitely share those. Those procedures were also created by the attorney. So, to ensure that we're in compliance, we will follow those. But I'd be more than happy to get them to you.
If you get them in me, I'll put them
Yep.
in my weekly update.
By Friday.
There was one correction I forgot to mention, the very first
Oh, yeah,
paragraph.
Hartford.
They mentioned a different school district. We've already picked up on that one, and we'll insert Romulus Community Schools there. Again, this was a blanket policy that was probably sent to several dozen school districts.
all right, good.
Okay, next, item F, tennis court repairs. I'm happy to address this, because we were only able to do this because our millage passed. And we desperately, if you've looked at those tennis courts, they're in sorry shape. And glad that we can approve those. So you actually formally approved this over a year ago, but we wanted to get formal approval again because the situation's changed a little bit, so we'll need a motion for this.
Need a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the Director of Business and Operations and Barton Mallow, Construction Manager, to award the quote to resurface the Romulus High School tennis courts to the lowest quoted vendor, Star Trek, for $18,000, battery of 5 courts, and $11,800, battery of 3 courts, for a total of $29,800.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Buckley, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Are there any questions? Okay, just,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Did they give you a time frame on when they could start? I know that we've been talking about weather and that kind of thing.
So they definitely won't be doing this before school starts. Their expectation is they will attempt to get it done before the weather gets bad, but I don't have a particular date for you. They are booked with other districts right now, resurfacing.
Okay. And my other question is, once they get started, because of the location, will that impact transportation with the buses coming in and out?
I don't have an answer for you tonight, but I can find out.
It's not
should
likely
be,
that, the equipment remember, they're not tearing them up and repaving them, they're filling the cracks and putting a new color coating on top and new lines. And there's not a lot of big equipment for
Okay,
that.
I was just wondering, because that area is kind of narrow when you're starting to talk about having equipment and what they're gonna need and trying
Right.
to get a bus through.
As we know more, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sherry, this is coming out of the sinking fund budget.
Sinking fund.
Right.
It was actually in the budget that you approved in June for this year, but we held on to determine whether the millage would be passed.
And they kept the same.
Yep, the quote is the same that they quoted back then.
Okay, what balance does that leave us with? Sinking fund?
Around $300,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Remember, some of the bidded items came in under. what
Any
we
other
expected.
questions? Okay, I just got it. Mr. Weiss, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but just for the general public, the battery that they're actually talking about is the fenced-in enclosure that the courts are actually in. The one has 5 courts and the one has 3 courts. Is that correct?
correct.
So that way, folks are not thinking we are buying batteries. It's the term they use in
Yes, that's
tennis
their term.
to describe the area that the players are in. Mr. Weiss, are the nets off of these courts yet? If they're unsafe for our students, I think they need to be removed for residents don't get injured or something like that.
The nets are still up.
They are.
It might be advisable to have the nets taken down if the courts are unsafe for our students. Just a suggestion.
We can do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Your comment just reminded me of something. I know at the middle school, the football field is under lock and key, both for the integrity of the field and for liability issues. Is that our intent? Are we going to start locking down to maximize the lifespan of the tennis courts so that only student-sponsored or school-sponsored athletes have access to that?
That has not been brought up,
Well,
and
that has.
I think it's probably something that, or not previously been brought up, let me rephrase. I suggest that we have some conversation about that. The situation with the football field was a little different. There were several clubs that were coming in and using that regularly as a training facility. With tennis courts, typically the abuse you get is you get skateboarders who come in and they leave lots of black marks, and tennis people don't like that. I'm not aware of any other kind of, sometimes, kids will set off fireworks, little things like that, but, it's something for discussion. I'm not aware of any abuse of the current courts, but again, it's at the board's pleasure, keeping in mind that the community members do pay for those courts, and it's kind of a nice turn. Yeah, and I see people out there all summer who are definitely too old to be in high school.
Yeah, I'm not talking
using the
about
courts.
abuse. Just to be
Right.
clear, I'm talking wear and tear on the nets, if nothing else. And, it's not our responsibility to provide rec programs for the city. The city has chosen to close all of their parks. That's on the city.
Do we have a posted rules on the fence by chance? In case the public comes in and uses it, can we post rules that says if you are the public using our facility, this is what you adhere to, and if you're found violating that?
Good suggestion.
It's only as good as those that enforce it. Nobody
Exactly.
sees it.
Well,
Again, I think, just my experience in other communities, unless there's a problem, and Don Morris and I had the same conversation about the football field 7 years ago, because some school districts do lock them up and some don't, and in many cases you have community members that come in sporadically and use the track, and then, there is wear and tear, but it's pretty minor. But in our case, our football field is at a point where it's going to need some attention pretty soon, and you're talking significant investment. And we had locked it up basically because we want to save it for as many seasons as we can for our kids. But again, that's at the board's discretion. We'll do what we're told.
Is there any other questions on the tennis courts? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say 7-0, motion passed.
Next, item G, surplus vehicle. I believe we have a bus that we need to dispose of.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move the Board of Education declare bus 18 as a surplus vehicle.
Support.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
Sherry, I know we were talking about we're gonna have to start maybe purchasing buses. Where does this leave us as far as our fleet? What are we looking
Well, right
like?
now, I think I shared with you, I don't know if it was when we discussed budget in June, that we were going to be in desperate need of some transportation in the near future. I mean, you've been hearing that for a while now, too. We believe we can make do with what we have. The problem that will exist is if one of those buses is in need of some major repair or maintenance, and it has to be off the road for several days. In that case, we don't have a backup vehicle. In the past, we used to have backup vehicles that could get out and serve the transportation needs of the one that was in repair. We don't have any obsolete buses sitting around. We don't have any buses sitting around that can do that anymore.
So basically, if we have a bus go down, our students are gonna be at the school until the bus is empty from a
It's
run.
very possible. And in terms of special education, some of those buses have, required needs. They have lifts and things of that nature. They're specialized, I should say. I just want you to be aware. I think I shared that with you over the last couple months, and we're not in any better situation. Actually, this just proves we're just getting worse.
I mean,
That was my question, because I know we had talked about
and
it.
I had an incident last year, like the special ed buses breaking down.
Yeah,
where,
I remember
mean,
that.
Kenny didn't get home till
Now, what I
almost
will tell
6
you
o'clock.
is, once enrollment comes in and we see where we are financially, I may be coming to the board to at least purchase 1 or 2 buses. So just be prepared. We're actually doing some investigation right now to see if there's anything out there to purchase that's on a lot or, with a manufacturer that already exists.
Mr. Chair, I have one other
Yes, ma'am.
question. I know that would be plan A is to purchase. Have we talked about a plan B that if the buses go down and say for instance, if it happens overnight, the bus doesn't stop, is there going to be some sort of notification?
We
like
always
kinda
do.
How we use like the weather
Robocall.
alert
Yeah,
kind of thing?
we always try to prepare parents as much as we can. Yes, we would use any form of communication that we have, whether it be robocall, telephone. Those routes are fairly small, so it's communication to call is pretty simple to do.
Is the price different on if you buy 1 bus versus 6 buses?
Not really. Mm-mm.
No, they don't give
No, if you put out a bid, typically, you're gonna get the same price. Now, if you go with a mass bid, for example, Michigan School Business Officials puts out a mass bid, but that's in August. We're too late for that. Typically, when you go with something like that, the prices are lower, but in most cases, you can tap onto those with it. If you know a vendor and you worked with a vendor and you like a specific model, the pricing can be arranged. I'm not,
Another district that's ordering a bunch of
possible,
buses and
too.
we can jump in with
That's
them
very
and get a
possible, too.
discount.
it's possible.
Okay, I just got one comment, Sherry. I know a facility that's gonna be changing its entire fleet over to natural gas shortly. It's gonna be a certified fuel point. I know they talked to the city. I don't know if that would be your expertise or Don's or the mechanics, but maybe that might be an idea to look in maybe in the future, in the next year or so, to see what kind of cost difference, especially with the price of fuel, how much more that would save and everything else. And the
Make a
fuel
note of
point
that.
will be in Romulus, so
I'll make a note.
just a suggestion. All right, any other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion passed.
Okay, last item H, shared time contract. A few of you have called or emailed me with questions about that. Just a little brief background. Historically, Romulus Community Schools did provide shared time teachers. This is a system that's allowable under the Michigan School Code where, since even though parents who send their children to private or parochial schools are contributing tax dollars to our school, we are allowed to provide certain things, certain opportunities to those non-public school entities, one of which is, we can't provide core classes, but we can provide electives. We can also provide transportation. Some districts do that. Historically, we provided, there was a school district in Taylor, and I think one in Huron, that we provided a shared time service with. And those opportunities kind of dried up through the years. We haven't been doing it for about 2 years? 2 years. It is a little bit of a revenue source for the school district. Basically, we get state aid for doing that, so it's an opportunity. We now have an opportunity, because the rules have changed, to provide shared time to a school that's not in our immediate area. Would that
It's
be?
not a boundary that touches us. So the law changed on that. It used to be you can provide those services for Romulus, for resident parochial schools, non-public, or for anybody that touches your boundary. They changed the law so that it's contiguous county. So, we have some greater opportunities here, but we don't have resources to go out and build the business. So that's where the share time contract comes in. We have great experience doing it. I know that we can do it. We've done it before. We just don't have, like I said, we don't have the resources to go beat the bushes and look for the business.
And other than some contact with our Human Resources Department, it's pretty invisible to the rest of the school district. These are teachers that never really show up over here other than for payroll purposes or, certification purposes. They work in those schools, but we are the fiscal agent for those teachers there. They do receive a Romulus Community School check.
That's correct.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we need to make a motion before we start asking
We should make the motion first, then we can ask the questions. It'd probably be a simple thing. So I need a motion then?
I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent to enter into a shared time agreement between School Financial Solutions LLC and Romulus Community Schools.
Support.
All right, got a motion by Ms. Funderburg, supported by Mr. Theed. Are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Funderburg.
Yes, so will they're not gonna be currently our staff, but just teachers? How, I guess my question.
They're gonna be
would
employed by, they will be employed by Romulus Community Schools.
Okay.
It will not be any employees that are laid off. So they're not our contract employees. I have an agreement with the REA because our experience with share time has been that those teachers have been contract teachers. In order for this to work, to financially work, they can't be contract teachers. They go through our community education program. We have an agreement with the union. They understand that this is a potential revenue source for the district. So, they've worked with us on this, and we're gonna run it through community education. So they are highly qualified, certified teachers that will work for Romulus Community Schools, but they will be placed in a shared time position at A, B, or C off-site location.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just for the record, there is no conflict, and I have spoken with legal counsel and with MASB, but I want fellow board members that don't already know this. I know the administration knows this. I personally know this consultant, Jack Pellin. So I just want it out there. He's a Rotarian in Garden City. So I just want it out there that, yes, Rob knows him in case he comes to a meeting or something and you see us chatting, it's like, well, where'd that come from? It's out there. There's no conflict. There's no benefit for me in here, other than I think Jack's a wonderful guy and he's been doing this with other districts. And-
He has been.
And I mentioned to
Successfully.
him, oh, really? Because I knew the law changed and I gave Sherry his phone number and the administration took it from there.
Well,
I was not in those conversations at all.
It's funny though, because Jack came to me back when I was still in alternative ed, and we were operating share time. We ran share time through community ed, even though it was paid through REA. So he came to me, and he also worked in alternative ed, so I knew him from, lots of meetings, and he's a great principal, great administrator over in Garden City. He came to me and tried to, he's a mover and a shaker, trying to figure out how can we make this, this was before the law changed. So, he's like, he had this vision way before the law changed on this. So when he came knocking on the door again, I'm like, Jack, the man with the Hawaiian shirt.
Yes, the Hawaiian shirts. Gotta love it.
Yeah, but he's had some success in Brighton as well as Plymouth Canton.
Yes.
We look at it as an opportunity to bring some revenue into the district and to, support perhaps some of our taxpayers. I don't know if there's any Romulus residents that are going to the parochial schools that this district will be supporting through that. But maybe.
Any other questions? I just got one comment. Is there a way that you could give us an update of what kind of revenue we've generated off this program? So the board can be addressed on that. Great. Other than that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0, motion passed. So far, so
Okay,
good.
next item, item 6, items of interest from the superintendent. You have a copy of the board and administrator monthly publication in your packet. It's interesting reading. I thought I'd share it with you. And then I want to add item 2. At our last board meeting, we discussed our preliminary plans to provide a child care service, and board members had some concerns. And at that point, the consensus was, let's delay this a little bit. We need more information. Some board members were not supportive of it. I've had contact with some board members since then, and who in turn, have become very supportive of it. Evidently, there was a little bit of a misunderstanding about some Facebook communications. I haven't seen those communications firsthand, but Sherry and I are both convinced that the individual was well-intended, but didn't come out that way. At any rate, because it's kind of a divisive issue, but there are some opportunities. Tom and I have been talking about this all week, starting last week, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And, there are a couple of reasons why we got into this situation with the child care. One was we have elementary buildings that have empty space, and we're paying for that space. And not that we'll make a lot of money on this, but the idea is to cover our expenses and provide a service to the community. There really hasn't been something that we've been associated since My Friends and Me. And so Rebecca and Sherry have found somebody who's interested in doing this, who comes very highly recommended. And in addition to that, Rebecca's worked with the union to make sure we wouldn't have any union issues. This is kind of a situation where if the board does approve this, this person would come in and basically they take care of their own cleaning. They do everything except provide the classrooms. We do that. Other than that, it's their business that we rent out. Some of the other advantages is it could, besides providing a service to the community, and filling a building that might not otherwise be full. We could eventually, many districts have programs in terms of career and technical education for child care certification for our high schoolers, so that we could use this as a training ground. Right now, what we're kind of exploring is that, and again, I'm trying to satisfy both sides of the board, so hopefully we can come up with a compromise that everyone is comfortable with. But the idea is that we would run this as a pilot with regular reports to the board on the progress that we're making and any challenges. Anytime you have a new program, things come up that maybe we didn't anticipate. So what's going to happen next is Sherry and I have scheduled a meeting with the provider tomorrow morning, actually, to talk about some of your concerns and what the next steps and how to address those concerns. I've spoken with Margie McAnally, principal at Rommel, about some concerns that she has, and I've solicited some suggestions there. What I would like board members to do, because Tom has heard from several of you who have some questions that haven't been answered yet, if you would be kind enough to email those questions to either Tom or myself or both of us between now and Friday, we'll make sure that we have answers to those, with the idea that at our next study session we would have a more in-depth discussion of this program. Right now it's too late for us to start this program. School starts a week from tomorrow, so we couldn't possibly expect this person, even if you gave her your blessing tonight. And I'm not sure that would happen to start, in that short order. But she is a licensed professional and already provides a service to many Romulus families. Some of those families are in this room who have used her before. It comes very well recommended, and we just, I would hate to see this opportunity overlooked. I think there's a potential to do some nice things and maybe even expand this program into some of the other elementary buildings as well. So that's where I wanted to leave it. So if you have questions, please send them to Tom or myself or both of us, and we'll make sure we get on those when we meet with her, or sometime thereafter. And once we have the answers, we'll share those with the whole board, probably before our next study session, so you have time to kind of think about things.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Chair.
Just one question. Your meeting tomorrow, is Margie McAnally a part of that meeting?
No, this is a meeting with Sherry and I and the provider to talk about her concerns. Margie and I have been having some conversations, but we're not at that point where we have a go-ahead yet, so at this point it really doesn't, we're getting input from Margie, but this is the first step. That would be a step farther down the road.
Okay. But since it was gonna be in her building, I just wanted to make sure that
Sure.
that she is in the loop. And I guess I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I'm a little bit out of the loop. So I'm just trying to get as much information as I can on what's regarding this child care center. So this person came to us, is that what happened?
That's accurate.
Okay, all right. And we have all the references and all that, background checks and,
Well, she would do a background check with the state licensing department. That's something they do when they provide a license.
And she is licensed.
Yes. She's a licensed daycare, but in terms of fingerprinting and things of that nature, that is conducted between her business and the state of Michigan.
Okay, so how was Romulus Elementary chosen over any other?
The only reason Ramel was even discussed was because that's the only elementary building that has proper space. When she approached us May, June, I started doing some investigation in terms of who thought they'd have some space in their building. And at the time, Ramel was the only one who raised their hand and said, I might have a couple classrooms in the early elementary wing of her building.
Do we know what the need of the community, if this is something that, I know we don't have anything like that in the community right now that we support, so do you know if we will have the need for it? I mean, have you did any of that?
Well, routinely, parents who are new to the community ask. I know Anna registers a lot of them. It's not unusual at all, and Lynn's here, and they ask about childcare for their younger ones. It's not an unusual request at all. And I know when we had My Friends and Me, I don't remember what the student enrollment was, but it was, I think it was 50 or 60 children. It was more than this. This woman comes with an enrollment. It's not like she would be started from scratch. She has roughly 30 children, I think, that she services. Not every day 30, but 30 families that drop their kids off.
Now, are these Romulus residents that would drop their kids off, or is it spread out through other than Romulus?
I mean, those are some of the things that we're going to address tomorrow again, but predominantly most of her clients, I shall say, are Romulus students.
Yeah, it's not much
Or
different
Romulus
than the Boys and Girls
children.
Club, where not all of them are Romulus residents, but a majority of them are.
Well, I know that, I just asked that question because I know there's a need, because I know there are people that would
Well-
use it, but I was just trying to get some background on how it all came about.
And I believe one of the other reasons that she came to the district is, there is a need out there for staff to have daycare in their school, to have daycare in their work environment. And this would provide an opportunity for this, if that program were to grow. We're not at that stage yet, but as a business person herself, I'm sure she sees an opportunity to provide a service to staff that work in Romulus Community Schools, that are looking to have daycare providers in the district.
Which I had a couple teachers ask me that at a couple functions, they wish they had daycare
Yeah.
because they have young kids that aren't in school yet, and they'd feel safer knowing their kid was in the same district they're working in case something happened.
Well, I've
They
had
could
some,
get a phone
and
call.
their inquiry was more or less if there was something wrong with their child, they could get to them
Right.
a little quicker too,
Right.
and that's,
That if they live in another city and work here, that the kid's not 5 cities over in daycare and have to find someone to get them.
I have a question. The only monies that we would earn from this would be from the leasing of the space.
That's
Not
correct.
not us collecting monies for the daycare provided, it's strictly just leasing the space.
Correct. We're renting space to a business.
That's our only
That's correct.
profit measure, I guess is what I should say.
Now, would they, other than renting the space, would they be charged like water rates and things like that if they're
The
using
rental
water?
space includes all of the utilities.
So it's figured in.
Correct.
estimate?
That's correct.
yes, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. One of the things that we discussed, one of the major things that we discussed at the last meeting was the transparency aspect of this. That this came to us, and we are custodians of the public trust and of public property. And I still have a very serious problem with us moving forward, giving favored status to this or any vendor when we have not, as a district, said, this is a program we're looking at investigating. We have daycare centers, and I'm not going to name the particular one, but that are a commercial, tax-paying business in this community. Now, are we now saying because this person came to us with what appears to be a nice program, we're going to allow them to be subsidized by using a public building and compete with one of our business neighbors? Again, this is coming at us too quickly with no information, now you're talking, you're gonna have a meeting tomorrow morning with this vendor when this board on August 13th clearly said, stop all progress until our concerns were addressed. How can we possibly have concerns when you haven't told us all the details? Nobody has said one word about how much rent is gonna be charged. As a matter of fact, it's still, as of the 13th, we were told that was being negotiated. And while I'm here speaking publicly, the contractor or the vendor did contact me with a phone number asking me to call her. That would be highly inappropriate for me to have a conversation with somebody this district's negotiating some terms with, not returning your call, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, I have a problem with us even moving forward on this. We said 2 weeks ago we weren't. And now emails start flying everywhere and, oh, well, we'll reconsider. We sit at this table and preach. When this Board of Education takes direction, we all own it and we move forward. I don't consider this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I guess my concern is, like I said, I'm sorry I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not sure what the board had decided, but if we, going forward, if we get all our questions answered, if this is something that will benefit the community, we can't start it this year anyway, I guess, right, from what you just
Not
said?
with the
We
start of
couldn't start with the
school.
school,
Okay.
yeah.
So once we actually have a chance to talk it out, figure out, get everything ironed out, all our questions answered, if it's a need in the community, and I know that there is, you know, I would hate us to cut off our nose to spite our face. I just wanna make sure that we look at the big picture, and I understand what you're saying, Rob. But I don't know what was said at this table. If you guys said, we don't talk about it no more, it's a done deal, it's finished, done, I'm not sure if that's what was said. But maybe somebody could tell me.
It was my understanding that this was not going to happen until at least the first semester. Because that was my understanding, that's what I wrote down in my note, was that we were gonna have a study session to fully discuss and hear what the administration was proposing, and to hear all of our concerns. I still, you know, I passed out a note to you before the meeting. I don't totally know enough about this to make an educated position on it. I can say that I have some serious issues with running a business that's gonna compete with our established business in this community without discussing, even if it was 2 paragraphs in the little paper. The district eliminated my friends and me because we couldn't make it as a profit. We couldn't break even. I don't understand how a private entity can come in and make a profit at this if we can't. We have the advantage of owning the building.
Yes, okay.
Okay,
Mike, can
let
I
me-
just
let me-
answer one question?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, so I think I just probably lost my train of thought. But now, what business are we competing with? If she's already has business, why would,
She has a business in
Other
Romulus, and she
child
pays
care.
taxes in
There's
Romulus.
oh,
Okay.
okay. So
What-
I'm just saying, but if there's, I'm sure there's probably a big enough
There's a
need.
daycare center on Eureka Road.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I know if it hadn't been for my friends and me, my son wouldn't had a chance to go to school. So, I mean, there's probably things, you know, at that age that he would be able to go. So I know there is a need. But I think, to me, if this is a benefit to the community, if we can get everything ironed out as a board and we're all satisfied with what this is, what we got going forward, I don't know why we can't go forward with it.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion.
Here's the situation, okay? This came up, and the board did, a majority agreed that they wanted the administration to stop. Well, a lot of concerns came up from it. So I talked to Carl about this, and they came up with the idea of, if all the board members email their questions to him and get them to him Friday, it's gonna give the administration time to get the answers. So at our study session, we should be able to get all the answers to all of our questions. And yes, some of us may have some of the same questions, but they will have all the questions. If we got until Friday, it gives us plenty of time to sit at home, watching TV, whatever, and think of the questions, and email them to myself and him. So this way, him and Sherry can work on getting the answers. Now, yes, they're probably gonna have to call the vendor again and probably get some of the answers. Now, I've already sent him my questions, and I've already forwarded the ones that Mr. Theed sent to me too, so he's got a basis to start with. Now, Mr. McLaughlin's got some questions and concerns, and everybody else at this table does. So there is a lot of valid ones that we have, and I've shared some of mine with some of the board members that I had, and some of them agree. So this is the best way, and if, on the study session, if we all still feel that this is something that's not, that we need to pursue, then that's the point where we're gonna shut it down, and that's it, and it's not gonna come back on the table. But if it's something that everybody feels comfortable and we got the answers, and I've explained to Mr. Weiss why some of the board members have felt a little bit more reserved or guarded or, you know, not really sure what right word to use, but more concerned about this program on some of the actions that we've gotten, and he's addressed that. So hopefully this will solve the whole issue. I know not everybody's happy about it, but, you know, it does have a need, and I have personally gotten some calls from some people asking about it, and there are some questions, just like when we go home, a lot of times we think about things, well, what about this and what about that? I mean, Mr. Thied mentioned that he's been asked by staff members, and I had 2 staff members actually said if there was a program like that, it would make their life a little easier. Now, my children are a lot older, so I don't really think of that infant size or 2 or 3-year-old anymore because my children are older. But if I had one, yeah, that would make my job a little easier if I worked in 2 different places, me and my spouse, and, you know, our child was able to be somewhat close. So we're going to review it, and if the board decides to shut it down, that's on that study session, that's it, and there's no more conversation about it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Which study session are we?
The next one in,
Next meeting in
September.
September.
That's why if we have all the questions by Friday, he'll have an entire week to kind of gain the information, and then he'll forward the questions to us with the answers, so we can elaborate on them, and hopefully everybody can have a better scope, because I know everybody, after we thought about more and more people have come up with other questions, so this is hopefully one way to kind of either stop or move forward, one or the other.
And I know on August 13th, I wasn't either for or against it, but I know my questions had to be answered before we even moved forward. But
Right.
it was under my intention too that we were gonna do it this year because we didn't have enough questions and there wouldn't be enough time to, formulate a plan. But, and no disrespect to Rob, I don't think we have a lot of daycares in our city. And I know when I was putting my daughter in one, none of the ones in Romulus sufficed my needs. And I'm Mr. Romulus. I believe in trying to use as much as I can here in Romulus.
I agree.
But for that type of business, my daughter's safety and her, well-being.
It's your
was
child.
the main
You
thing.
gotta
And
be
I took her to
concerned.
Westland to a daycare.
Well,
So,
and I'm not here to advocate for or against the commercial establishment that's on Eureka Road. My concern is purely from protecting the taxpayers from liability, because if I was a business person and one of my local units of government was subsidizing my competition, I'd have them in court so fast they wouldn't know what hit them.
well, I
And
think we're
don't
just-
think for a minute that their corporate headquarters won't jump on that.
I don't think, we're not in the daycare business, we're just renting out space, which is a business nowadays for us to survive.
But did we advertise that we were going to let
Well,
that space
Well,
out?
I
That's-
agree
This
that.
is-
I agree
this
on
is-
one aspect, there should
This
be a
is
bid
some of the
process.
this
We
is
could
some of the
offer anyone.
things that we were
Exactly.
talking
Three
about.
businesses come in and
is-
say, I wanna put a
Okay.
daycare in all 3, we can rent the money out of 3 spaces, let them all, if they
Well-
fail, we still get rent money.
All right, this is some of the things that some of the questions were that we need to put on there. But I know some of the questions I was had, if this happens to go as a pilot, that we get updated reports on a regular basis. But if it comes out to where it's a need all over, then we make sure as the board, and we advise the administration, everybody that's licensed gets an invitation to the bid.
Okay.
And then nobody, it's not like this individual's gonna have carte blanche, they can bid on every position. Any other buildings will be open bid to anybody in the district. So if there's a business on Eureka or Van Born, if they want to bid on it, then they can bid on the position and the service provided. So, okay. Any other concerns there, Mr. Weiss?
No, I think we're set. I'll send out a reminder midway through the week,
Okay.
soliciting for questions, and we will get back with you.
Next item of business is communication expression from public. I have none from anybody. Nobody gave me one. So the next item of business is questions and concerns from board members. I'll start with Mrs. Kraut. You got anything?
No?
Mr. Thied?
Yes, I do. I was approached by a couple people at the city and some residents. The old property on Olive, the football field, the Flyers are using. A lot of people are talking about that sidewalks are blocked by cars when they park for the Flyers. And people who use that sidewalk, either they're walking a dog or riding a bike, they can't, and the way the cars are parked, they're so close to, I believe, Olive, that if there's kids running in and out, they're gonna get smacked by a car.
I-
So we need to address when people use that field of ours, that we have to have a certain parking spot. They shouldn't be covering the city sidewalk, even though the property's ours, I believe the city's sidewalk.
That's been an ongoing battle with the
So-
organization. It's nothing bad, it's just the parents themselves. They are, the administration
Well, the
constantly on it.
organization's gonna have to enforce
But what I will
the rule
do
that we
after
set
the,
aside,
after the meeting, you don't have to do it, Mr. Weiss, I'll do it. I'll call the two people that I know that are on the executive board over there and express that concerns that we're getting calls from the public and they need to address that. If not, then maybe we'll have to call the 8400 number down the street and they can come out there with their
Take a-
coupon book.
Yep.
Generate some revenue for the city.
Would we be able to put like lines on the grass so that they can actually have
Parking
spots?
space one.
Well, the problem is over there is, there's, the way they have it set up, where there's 3 different teams, there's approximately 100 football players out there with probably about another 40 to 50 cheerleaders, plus their siblings, parents, and as long as the weather's nice, you have a multitude of parents. Once the weather gets cooler and more damper, the parent population decreases. So, and then there's a walking track, and a lot of parents go out there and walk on it. So I'll start with the executive board members over there with that, and then we'll see if that works, and hopefully we can get that resolved. Because and right now, they're doing a lot of practices. They're doing 6 days a week right now. Then after Labor Day, they'll go down to 4 days a week. So I'll address that with them as soon as we get out of here.
Thank you.
No problem. Ms. Funderburg?
Yes, Camp Learn a Lot, finished up their summer program over at Wick Elementary. Got an opportunity to meet a lot of, parents and families, kids, and it was a really nice event. They did have a video, and I was wondering, I heard kind of a little whispering that it would possibly be posted on the website.
Yes, George Lucas doesn't live in Romulus, but there must be a genetic connection between George Lucas and Jesse McAnally, because he just did a wonderful job with the video. But it's not in a format that we can accommodate right now. He was going to work on redoing it to a format, and if he does, we want to show it to at a board meeting, but it's pretty long, and so we've concluded the best thing would probably be to run it on cable and put a link on our website. So we're waiting to hear from young Mr. McAnally on his
Could he
progress.
post it on YouTube?
Pardon?
Could he post it on YouTube?
He was going
or-
to. He hadn't yet, but he was working on that. And there were some formatting issues. If you were at the thing, we noticed there's a lot of the picture was kind of jumping around in spots, and that wasn't supposed to be that way. So
He'll get it.
Being a perfectionist, we have to give him a little time. But it was a terrific video, and I agree. It was we had a ton of parents there and families, and they were just as proud as could be. A lot of smiles, and Mrs. McAnally, and kudos to Dr. Daniels for all her work in setting this up. It was a real success.
Yeah, and I think our student teacher aides really had a really good time. It was a good experience for them as well, because they got, some job skills, they got some summer spending money. But also
They were here to
it
eat their
kind of
transfer.
acclimates them into that exploration of whether or not they want to be our future teachers. And so I think they did a really good job too. And, some of the kids shared some tears with some of their little students who they weren't going to see anymore. And so it was a really good program overall. Two other things. Go ahead.
We have a little presentation that we're trying to pull together
Okay.
for September.
Good.
Okay. I also wanted to say that Romulus got some press time. There was an article in the Detroit News. They interviewed Coach Patterson and two of our players on the team in regards to the millage passing and the camaraderie that kind of took place in order to pass the millage. And so if you get an opportunity, I know that there's a link. Is that something that we could put on our website, as well as to possibly get a link to the Detroit News on our website as well for that article?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then WWJ 950 also did a expose on the Camp Learn a Lot as well. So we've got some really good things going on in Romulus. So keep your eyes and your ears open. That's it.
Ms. Buckley?
Just wanted to say, Anna, thanks for my gear that I
Yeah, that was-
received in
yeah.
my packet, so just pass my thanks. Thank you.
Ms. Beard?
I have nothing.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Thank you. The only thing I would echo with Ms. Funderburg's statements about Camp Learn a Lot. I knew I couldn't be there for their closing ceremony. Mrs. McAnally was kind enough to tour me the building about a week and a half ago. I got to meet a lot of the children there, and I actually went back. That's when I ran into Dr. Daniels there, because I took her some school supplies to give to the kids that were leaving the program and things. I would echo, wonderful program. The children were having a ball. The classrooms that we went into, just an impromptu, what do you like about Camp Learn a Lot? And the kids, I love to read, or I like science, and just wonderful impromptu feedback from the kids. It was not scripted or anything, so it was very well, and the staff that she had was phenomenal. I really hope that we can grow this and make it an annual event, and it does definitely provide a service to the community, and it fills a definite need. And that's really all I have.
Okay. I really don't have anything. I apologize I couldn't make it to it. I would like to, but my job wouldn't allow me. And also, thanks for the shirt for camp, and also the maroon shirt imported from Romulus. Whosever idea that was, I'd like to have all the board members wear that at our next study session. That's your attire. We all wear our imported from Romulus shirt on our next study session. Got it? That's your dress.
Somebody better remind me.
We will put it in Mr. Weiss's weekly update.
Somebody remind me.
Because I think that is one of the classiest ones we've had. We want also get on the bandwagon like everybody else does, So,
Oh, I did have something.
go ahead, Mr.
I'm
McLaughlin.
sorry. Are we doing the parade?
The light parade?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to have,
Are we invited?
I don't know
I
either.
don't know.
yes, you're invited.
I've seen some
You know-
communications.
Rotary
we're
Memory
planning on
just
having,
invited
but
you.
we haven't been contacted.
Well, you and I had conversation last year, Tom.
Yes.
And we said we were gonna walk instead of riding, and we were gonna buy
Well,
candy. Are we doing
that's,
that?
that was, we can talk that on the study session, so everybody bring $20.
Well, I mean, I'll limp, but they say we can't throw candy from the float. Well, then fine, I'll
Well,
walk and
at
hand
the study
candy out.
session is one of the
It's
things.
Halloween, come on.
Study session is one of the things that we talked about, saying thank you to the community. I think if we make some small candy bags up and put thank you for their support, and then we give it to board members, we'll have to have lights on as we do it, and I'm checking into that. And we can walk along the float, have the float carry the candy, and maybe
I thought
the
we
board
all
members
had
that can.
glowing personalities.
And then we can give it to the kids.
Lights?
Yeah, you got, if you're walking, you gotta have lights.
I know.
So, but,
I'll put on a blinking red nose.
but other than that, bring $20 and then we can all have some input.
I was just gonna go shopping and buy a bunch of candy, so.
So, after we all get our $20. Okay, the next item we have is an executive session. There'll be no action afterwards, so we'll just need to clear the room after that, and then it'll be adjournment after that. So there'll be, it's just for the superintendent's quarterly evaluation review. So, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of superintendent's quarterly evaluation.
All right, motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Can I get roll call, please?
Mrs. Kraut? Yes. Mr. Thede?
Yep.
Mrs. Funderburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Kudrick?
Yes, and we'll take a 2-minute break before we actually do that part.
Sounds good. All right.
All right, motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Ms. Buckley, or Ms. Funderburg?
At
Sorry about-
7:34.
7:34. Can I get roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mrs. Kraut? Yes. Mr. Thede? Mrs. Funderburg? Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Kudrick?
Yes. Need a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by the girls. No. Ms. Buckley. Ms. Buckley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion